Hey guys, just wanted to do my review of Legends of Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 15, Destiny. So, the episode opens up with, I guess, like a flashback to January 2016 to the pilot in which Rip was recruiting everyone, and they were in Star City, and he showed them the images of the apocalyptic future he came from, and it seemed like everybody at that time was reluctant to even consider the trip, and Jack, Stein's trying to convince Jax to go on the trip, and he says no. And then Jax from the future appears and asks for Stein's help, and they both go back to Central City to start labs to, I guess, get a component from the time spear that was used in the Flash season 1 finale, and in order to power the jump ship to get back to the Wave Rider. And Jax is going on about how he forgot how arrogant Stein used to be, and when he asks why Jax is talking about him in the past tense, Jax says he doesn't want to tell him too much about his future. All he says is that he understands that why Stein was so hard on him, and that Stein was just looking out for Jax, and he forgives Stein for roofing him to go on the trip. And when Stein says he would never do that, he says, yeah, you do, and it's the best decision I never made, which I guess it's supposed to be the writer's way of saying, like, oh, Jackson planted the idea of Stein drugging Jax to get him to go on the trip anyway, to create that whole, like, Terminator stable time loop. And then you found out that Snart and Sarah were the only members of the Wave Rider that weren't captured by the Time Masters, because they hid in some underground bunker in the main part of the ship. And Snart threatens to kill Sarah if she doesn't fly the Wave Rider out of there and leave everybody behind. And Sarah thinks she's putting on a tough guy act and that she wouldn't really kill him, but then they hear the phone ringing from Rip's study, and they're on the main bridge, and then they realize it was Gideon survived the malfunction of the Wave Rider, and that they initiate a plan in which Snart and Sarah start implanting devices on all the other time ships in order to disable them. And meanwhile, while the others are being held captive, Meg is taken by the Time Masters to be reconditioned to become Kronos again. Hawkgirl is being taken to Vandal Savage to take her back to 2166, where he assassinates Rip's wife and son again, just like in the pilot. And we also find out that Rip also finds out from Druce that the reason why the Time Masters were working with Savage in the first place is because there was a Thanagarian invasion in the year 2174 in which they try to take over the planet, and they feel like Vandal Savage is the only one who can unite the world against them and save the world. But Rip just says that in any case, like, humanity is still oppressed, whether it's by Savage or by the Thanagarians. And then he's taken to the Oculus, which is what the Time Masters has been using to manipulate events, which basically means that they've been using it to manipulate the team all season to go to and help and use them, and use, like, the events of the past episodes to lead to Vandal's rise to power. And what really hits Rip the most is the fact that he realizes that it's true, where he, like, touches the Oculus and even sees past events, including like past past events, future events, including Ray's death, and Druce even tells them that they're the ones that gave Vandal Savage the order to kill Rip Hunter's family in order to motivate him to go on the mission in the first place, and he was basically this cog in a very large machine, and he's basically ready to throw in the towel and, accept their fates, that there's no hope for them at this point, and Ray's the only one who's being the optimist, saying that they can't give up and that they can still find a way out of it. And they still didn't get to Sarah and Snart, and basically Sarah pilots the Wave Rider out of the vanishing point and jumps through the time stream, and then comes right back and starts firing on the vanishing point base, while Snart, which causes a distraction, which allows Snart to break the other members of the team out of their prisons, and then Snart's confronted by Mick as Kronos, but it turns out that the brainwashing didn't work, and that the Time Master responsible for trying to recondition him ends up the one getting injured and shot, and then as revenge, Mick crushes his head with his boot. And so they're able to escape back onto the Wave Rider, but just they're getting sucked in by the tractor beam. Ray uses the Mick's Kronos glove to hack into the Vanishing Point's base systems, and they're able to escape into the time stream. And they're all talking about what to do next because they don't know what to do, because they could be playing into the Time Master's hands, and they decide they had to go destroy the Oculus Spring in order to stop the Time Masters from using it to see into the timeline and manipulate events. And Snart starts to make a pass at Sarah, saying about how he was lamenting about how things would have been if they had a future, maybe you could have seen them as a couple. And Sarah makes this line saying, if you want to steal a kiss from me, you had to be one hell of a thief. And so they make it to the Oculus Spring back beneath the Vanishing Point, but they're ambushed by the Time Masters until Jack shows up in the jump ship, just gunning down all of the troops that Druce brought with him to recapture the team. So he rejoins with Stein, and they start to make their attack, and when they start to hack into the Oculus Spring power source, Rip realizes this is the moment where he dies, and Ray's already come to terms with it, and he comes to terms with it, and he says you always want to die and make a difference, but Mick decides to knock him unconscious and sacrifice himself in order to make sure everybody gets out of there. And so Rip just shrinks him and decides to make a run for it. And then when Rip explains what Mick's trying to do, Sarah and Snart go back for Mick, and then Snart knocks Mick unconscious and tells Mick to get him back to the ship, and Sarah gives him a kiss, and they're both able to get back to the ship while Snart holds his hand on the failsafe. He's surrounded by the Time Masters, but they can't do anything to stop him. And he uses this line, which I like, which is kind of like a nice nod to Age of Ultron and Pinocchio, where he says, "There are no strings on me," before the whole Oculus Spring just explodes as the ship vanishes into the time stream. And everybody is mourning Captain Cold, but as much as it was a pretty badass heroic moment, given this show is I've seen two of the characters who have been supposedly killed off have both come back, and the fact that it was announced publicly right after the episode aired that Wentworth Miller signed a contract to become with Warner Brothers to become a recurring character on Berlanti's shows Berlanti produced shows like Flash and Legends and maybe even Supergirl. So it didn't really hold that much weight to it, but the fact that Mick was still pissed about his death and still wanted to kill somebody for Snart's death, he said they can still go after Savage. He was fine with that, but of course when Rip asked about timeline data, he said because the Oculus Spring was destroyed, they have no timeline data to rely on or pinpoint his location and whatnot. And when Vandal Savage is told by one of the remaining Time Masters about what the team did, and that basically the Time Master can no longer help Vandal Savage because they don't have information of the timeline anymore, Kendall just starts to chuckle, realizing that he basically doesn't have his buddies to aid him in his rise to power. And Vandal just laments that he still has the time ship, the jump ship, so he figures if he can't take over the world, he can still manipulate the timeline to manipulate the timeline. And so, overall, I think this is probably the best episode thus far, and it's basically gained some, like I said, this is probably the coolest moment. Everybody really had their moments. And except for, Sainz, Kendra, and Carter, who've been kind of the weak links for the most part. But, it's a really, really solid episode, and it's really great. I really hope this momentum keeps up into the season finale, because the trailer looks pretty badass, so I hope that, it lives up to the hype based on the trailer. So, what do you guys think of the episode? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.